Welcome to This Week in Plymouth. I am the guest host, Julie Thompson, with Derek Brindisi. We're going to talk about two really important things today. It's kind of a year-end in review, the reorganization that you've done with the town, and then we're going to talk about the goals and priorities and the year in review as far as what the select board got done.
Yeah,
so why don't
absolutely.
You start?
So thanks for having me, Julie. So last night at the select board meeting, we rolled out what we call Phase 3 of our reorganization plan. So 2 weeks ago, we started with Phase 1. So just to kind of recap what that was, we had a number of disparate divisions that were out there, kind of floating out there, reporting to the assistant town manager. And so we thought, let's take those divisions and let's find them an appropriate location within the greater table of organization. So, for example, the procurement office was not working with the finance department. And so part of the Phase 1 reorganization made a lot of sense. Okay, let's take procurement, work with the finance department. Procurement is all about the town's finances,
Right.
so it was really easy to do that transfer. And then the other one was, again, the airport, kind of on an island unto itself,
Right.
reported directly to the assistant town manager. And so oftentimes with the airport, when I was the assistant town manager, I found that the airport really wasn't engaged on the day-to-day business of town government,
Right.
and oftentimes was kind of like left out. So what we did is we worked out an agreement with the Airport Commission, who have lots of statutory authority when it comes to managing airports. We worked that agreement out, and then we transferred the airport manager and staff under the Department of Public Works.
Makes
Some
sense.
people,
Yep,
it's
makes perfect
infrastructure,
sense. Yep,
it's utilities, so we thought that made sense. And then the last one I thought was really super important. The town clerk, again, reported directly to the airport, to the assistant town manager. And if you look at the responsibilities and the roles of the town clerk, they are immense
Right.
and very broad. And so whether it's dealing with elections or a lot of our vital statistics, all comes out of the town clerk. So we elevated the town clerk division to a department level. So the town clerk now has that status within all the other departments, fire, police, DPW. So again, that was, and that recommendation came from my experience working very closely with the town clerk in Upton. I realized at that moment, because we shared almost a common wall in town hall, all the responsibilities the town clerk has. So, and when I came back here, I didn't want to lose that. So we elevated that position to that status. So that was Phase 1. Phase 2, we talked a lot about on this show a couple of weeks ago with Chief Flynn, and that was transferring the Harbor Master's office over to the police department. Some people say, why? It's been working great under Department of Environmental Affairs. All true. They've done amazing work in the harbor over the last 5 years. You know, they dredged the harbor, a state boat ramp, and building a new town boat ramp, the maritime facility, they did the pier over, and so much more. The aquaculture, blue economy industry. And so folks were a little nervous, geez, are we going to lose all that going to the PD? And the short answer is no, none of that's going to change. We're still going to have folks working on those fronts. But what was different today than it was even a couple of years ago is police reform. So when police reform was passed in 2020, what it did is that it really raised the accountability level for law enforcement agencies. And so the Harbor Master's Office is a law enforcement agency.
And a lot of people don't realize that.
No, you're right. They don't, because they look at all the other things that they're doing. And so for liability purposes and because of police reform, we thought it was the best fit to move Harbor Master under the PD. So again, the chief is working out an agreement with the Harbor Master to make sure that there's a number of protections in place for the Harbor Master as well. So again, we're trying to compromise and make things work. And then the last thing, last week we had mentioned was our 911 dispatch center has historically been managed by the police department, is actually moving to the sheriff's department effective July 1st.
Oh, to the county sheriff's department.
To the county sheriff's department, yeah. So if folks understood the ring down system and the transfers of calls after calls when you dial 911, they would be concerned. And so Chief Flynn and Chief Foley, they spent almost 2 years working on this project with former Chief Ed Bradley to be able to say, okay, how can we cut just the call down system in half. And by moving it to the sheriff's department, it does that. So we know we will get faster 911 response times, which save lives.
Yes,
And,
absolutely.
and property.
Yep.
So that's going to take place effective July 1st as well. So those are the first 2 phases, and last night we did phase 3.
Okay. So what's phase 3?
So phase 3 is a little bit different of approach. So we're trying to reimagine how we do business in Town Hall. And one of those areas is our Community Resources Department. Yep. So folks that are familiar with the Community Resources Department, that consists of the Center for Active Living, the library, the Veterans Office, the Disability Commission, Recreation
Yep.
is there, and then the 1749 Courthouse Museum is also all in the Community Resources. And so, what we're trying to create is what is known as the Health and Human Services Department.
Okay. Which we don't currently have.
We don't have right
Okay.
now. And so the first question is, so, why are we doing this?
Yep.
And so what I shared with the select board last night is Plymouth is changing, and I've said this many times. Plymouth has an urban feel to it in the downtown core area, the North Plymouth area. And so we have urban issues we have to address, right, in those areas.
Yep.
And then there's like the Chiltonville area, the Miniman area,
Yep.
we have like suburban issues.
Absolutely.
And then when you go further south and maybe west, you get some more rural areas. So Plymouth is such a diverse community. It's probably the most diverse community in Massachusetts, I think. And so we need to have a department that is responsive to societal needs.
Yep.
And so one thing you'll see in the summers, you see a lot of homeless folks living there. And so what are we doing as a community to address that issue? We looked at some data that came out of a 2022 Community Health Needs Assessment. I just read some of this to you. That came out of this needs assessment. 45% of our Plymouth residents stated they are using more substances than prior to the pandemic. 35% of residents stated they have had 15 or more poor mental health days in the past month. 18% of residents stated they would like the community to have better access to healthy food. 25% are worried about their ability to purchase groceries in the coming weeks. The percentage of adult obesity was higher in Plymouth than the statewide average, and 44% of our survey respondents stated they need more affordable housing. That's just a snapshot of the evolving needs of our residents.
Both physical and emotional.
Exactly,
Yeah.
right.
Yep.
And so what is now the Community Resource Department is a really nice framework to begin the conversation of what do our community residents need? What are the societal needs? Is it, focusing on behavioral health, substance abuse, homelessness, chronic disease, acute disease like infectious diseases, for example. So we're moving towards, we're doing an analysis of moving the Community Resource Department to a Health and Human Services Department, and then part of that is taking what is now our Public Health Division, which is under Inspectional Services,
Yep.
and moving that, realigning public health over in this new formed Health and Human Services
Makes
Department.
total sense. Yeah. And these all work together. When you think about it, there's a lot of piggybacking.
They do. Well,
Yeah.
no, and that's the thing. So when we look at the recreation, so it's like, okay, if we have the recreation director talking to the Center for Active Living director,
Yeah.
how can they join forces and leverage programs? So can recreation bring some programs to the Cal, for example?
Yep.
Can the Cal get out and work with the Veterans Office?
Absolutely.
Because they serve a veterans population as well. So it's breaking down barriers within our own organization, but at the same time it's, all right, what other components do we have to bring into the conversation? And that's working with, we have a lot of nonprofit organizations that do amazing work in this town. And they're out there doing it, but we aren't actively engaged in those conversations. And so this new department helps us get to that. So we start having conversations around substance abuse with our community partners. We have a hospital. We're very lucky to have a hospital in this community. And so we want to be standing shoulder to shoulder with BID on some of these issues. Do I think we're going to be an organization that's going to provide these types of social services? Probably not, but what we can do is we can convene those conversations. We can help with doing these types of assessments to identify the needs and then try to find resources to fill those needs.
Absolutely. Now, is this a done deal, or is this a proposed structure? Or is this is done?
So the board voted last night to implement this structure.
Great.
Which I appreciate, but we're going to go through a series of assessments, community conversations in order to come back with, this is exactly what we want this department to do. This is the vision, this is the mission, these are the goals of the department. So we're bringing on an individual, and we'll bring him on in the show at some time during the summer. His name is James Gardner. He was the former Health and Human Services Commissioner in Worcester. He has since retired and found his retirement home down the Cape. So when Barry de Blasio, the former Director of Community Resources, retired, I had reached out to James and I said, hey, we need help.
Yeah.
And there's no guy that I know better that knows exactly what I'm envisioning in my brain than he does.
Yep.
So he's now on staff. He's working with those divisions, and he's going to carry us through this process throughout the summer months, and then we'll come back in the fall and say, yep, this is exactly what we plan to do.
Great. So now let's go on to the FY23 Select Board Goals and Priorities Year in Review. And I know you presented this to the Select Board last night, and I went through it today, and I was pretty amazed at the amount of initiatives or programs that were created and finished that weren't even part of the plan, but ended up being things that you needed and you did.
Right.
Talk about this whole process, because this is fascinating.
Yeah, so last night we did our year in review, and just to take a step back a little bit to last summer, through a couple months, we went through our own process. I worked with the department heads. They collectively established a bunch of goals that they knew were very important for their own departments. We brought those goals forward to the Select Board. We said, hey, these are our ideas. What are your ideas? The Select Board, some of them they didn't want us to work on. They had their own goals they wanted to add. So it was a really good mix of Select Board members working with department heads, and collectively we developed these FY23 goals and priorities.
Okay.
That was out last year. So here we are, almost 12 months later. We says, how well did we do, right? So that's what we presented last night, and we clearly can't go through it all. So this is on our website, just so you know, if folks want to go look at it. But one thing you'll see if you look at this document, we have green check marks, and that means completed. We have these blue half check marks, means that they're in progress, because many of the goals that were established, there's no way they could have been accomplished in 1 year. So some of them are 2, 3, some even 5, 6 years out.
Okay.
So these are some of the goals that are in progress. And then I think to your earlier point, we have these like plus marks with a circle around it.
Yeah.
And so those are the items that were accomplished that weren't in the original document. And the reason being is because we have to be responsive to community needs. And every Tuesday night, the board will say to us on the new business, these are the complaints I'm getting, these are the concerns I'm hearing, can you address this? And so it becomes another item that we have to focus our energy on, and oftentimes it takes us away from the main set of goals and priorities.
Right.
So we really were intentional in trying to capture everything that we were able to complete over the course of that year. So that's the way it's arranged. So again, there's a lot of work here. I'm not going to cover it all, but I'm just going to hit some of the highlights.
Sure.
So we created these various domains, or some of us call them buckets.
Yep.
So the first bucket was ensure a safe and healthy community.
Yep.
And so within that is a bunch of items that came out of public safety, fire, police, dispatch, for example. And as I just mentioned earlier, during the reorg, one of the goals we wanted from last year was to create a 21st century dispatch center. And now we've done that. It's going to the Sheriff's Department effective July 1st. So there's one accomplishment. Another item that we wanted to focus on was expanding our school resource officer program. That's a big program. You've seen a lot of the events across the nation, and school safety is one of our #1 priorities. The chief was able to do that. We have more school resource officers in our schools today than ever before. So again, another accomplishment on the public safety side. And then Chief Foley, just a few weeks ago, presented the final report of a comprehensive fire study. This fire study is going to take our fire department into the next 10 to 15 years.
Great.
It looks at response times, it looks at what do we need for appropriate staffing models, what do we need for equipment, and then as important, where do our fire stations need to be in order to meet those response times? So as you know, fire stations have the rehabs have been a big conversation.
Yep.
So again, there's more in that area for folks to take a look at, but let's move on to the next area. So I'll just cover a couple of things that were add-ons under ensure a safe and healthy community. Just for example, we had an influx of migrants that came to this community in November. Nobody could have predicted it. It took a lot of time, took a lot of energy. A lot of different departments had to be responsive to that. Our school department, our fire department, emergency management, all had to come together to be able to care for these families that came here. Not a goal, but it's something that we had to accomplish during the course of that year. So as far as financial planning,
which is another one of your
buckets. That's another bucket.
Okay.
That's another bucket area. So again, working with our finance director, Lynn Barrett, that team of finance folks were able to create for the first time ever a 10-year capital improvement plan. And if you look at this capital improvement plan, it goes out 10 years and it lists all of the capital items that we know we're going to need to acquire. Some of it is building improvements. Some of it is rolling stock, like fire trucks and dump trucks and things of that nature. But what it does, it tells us as a community where we need to focus our resources, because we have very limited resources. And then part of this financial planning tool is that it also projects how much available free cash we're going to have to put towards that. So I wish we had more money to put towards the capital plan, but at least it gives everybody a snapshot of really where we have to be with our town's finances.
And that includes the financial plans for facility management, which is always something in every town that comes up. Like, do we plan enough to manage the facilities we have? Right,
and that's been, as you know, that's a work in progress, because we have most communities use free cash to fund their capital, the facilities management, and because we have such a large community, we can only use a very small percentage of that. So we're really thinking, our assistant town manager, our finance director, and myself are coming together to be creative to think about what is the best approach to fund the facilities management piece.
Okay. A couple of things you did in there, the sales of underutilized town-owned properties.
Yeah, that's a good one. So again, not a goal for last year, but the select board there were a number of people in the community saying, hey, listen, we've been hearing for decades now all these pieces of land that we own. What are we going to do with them someday? And they made a commitment. They said, listen, we'll start selling them off. So about 2 months ago, we sold South Meadow Road for $1.2 million. We're actively working on an agreement to sell the old fire station in North Plymouth. And then there's a lot of other small parcels of land. We're putting our plans together to think about either we put those in conservation restrictions or we just sell them off to local abutters. So
perfect.
A lot of work.
And the other important thing was the grants, the awards and grants.
Yeah, so last year, just with our grant writer alone, Tiffany Park, she helped write $6.5 million of grants applications. Those were awarded, but there's other dollars that we received last year. Like, for example, we received $25 million for an Army Corps project over at Long Beach. That's not even captured in this slide. But already, so we're 5 months into this calendar year, our grant team has already applied for $25 million in grants.
That's incredible.
Waiting to, hopefully we'll get the awards, but we're waiting to see. So
that's
again,
incredible.
Another big accomplishment this past year.
Yep. Another bucket, communicate and engage with the public.
Yes.
Which we love here at PACTV.
And we did a presentation a couple weeks ago. We spent about 45 minutes just focusing on how we have changed using technology to actively engage and communicate with the public. So we have this new program called See, Click, Fix. Folks can go online. If they have a pothole in their neighborhood, they can report it. It gets routed to the DPW, for example. The DPW sees it. They dispatch a group out there to fill the pothole, and then they enter it. Pothole's been filled, so you as a resident can see when it was dispatched and when it was filled. So it's being highly used. I think last year we filled about 520 potholes last year alone. So that's online now. We have a very user-friendly town website that's out there now.
It's gorgeous.
And Anthony Sinesi, I think you know him well. Him and Joe Young, our IT director, did an amazing job.
They did.
Last time they did a website update was 2015.
Yep.
Imagine last 8 years what's transpired in the technology industry. And then another complaint we received a lot last year is people get lost in town hall. And so using technology is just another tool. So we have these big kiosks. When you first enter, you can click on, I want a birth certificate. It tells you, okay, birth certificate, you go to the town clerk, and it tells you how to get to the town clerk's office. So one thing we should do is a little on-the-spot video and with PACTV, and we can do a little video as well. So that'll help folks.
Okay.
And then, just a couple add-ons, with the help of really PACTV, some of these bottom ones, it's like now we have hybrid technology in all of our meeting spaces, the Shallop room, the Atlantic room, the 1820 courtroom, thanks to PACTV. We've outfitted that. The sound and the AV technology has greatly enhanced the use of that space. So, and we have the first hybrid town meeting in, I think, all of New England. I think the first in New England.
I think it was the entire country, actually.
It could be.
Yeah.
So again, we're not on our bucket list, but we accomplished it anyways. And then just trying to expand our social media presence as well.
Yep.
So we've created Instagram links, and we had some Facebook and stuff like that. But LinkedIn now we're on LinkedIn to recruit. So
go where people are. Yep. To communicate.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Another bucket, ensure a vibrant economic development business sector.
So when I interviewed for the position last year, economic development was one of the items that the select board talked a lot about. So we've done a lot to try to, and I would say in year one, our focus was just trying to make interacting with Town Hall for our businesses and residents a little bit easier. So through Inspectional Services and Nick Mayo, we now have an e-permitting system. So if you're a contractor, you can go online and pull your building permits and your plumbing permits all online. You don't even have to go to Town Hall anymore. What we also did to try to make it easier for our contractors is create this one-stop shop model. So in the old days, if you were going to construct a building, for example, you got to go to Town Hall, pull your building wiring and plumbing permits. Then you got to drive over to fire headquarters and pull your fire permits. Now when you go to Town Hall, you can do all of that. One shop. Fire prevention is now embedded in Inspectional Services, and we're getting a lot of strong feedback for that model as well.
Okay.
And then under Lee Hartman's direction, we in the fall town meeting, we passed 2 zoning bylaws that we hope will be a little bit more responsive and flexible to some of our growing economic development needs.
Perfect. Okay, let's go on to the improve town infrastructure and protect the environment.
Okay, good. So a cemetery, when I came on board last year, one of the first meetings I attended was the board taking a vote to impose a moratorium on the sale of cemetery lots. We run out of cemetery space. So this past year, we've been able to identify where the next cemetery is going to be, where we've got funding now to design the next cemetery. So we're actively moving forward in that respect. Hopefully in the next year and a half, we'll have a cemetery and we can lift that moratorium. We've achieved last year the Green Community designation, which was a major accomplishment. But they've been working on that for years. That allows us to be more competitive when we apply for state grants. And then last year alone, we purchased 4 electric vehicles. We're going to purchase another, I think, 4 this year. So we're starting to electrify our fleet as well. So a lot going on in trying to just think about green infrastructure and things of that nature. And one other item, if we have time, this was an add-on. We found out last year in the middle of the summer that we have this firm capacity water deficit in West Plymouth, which means that we have a water problem during the drought months in West Plymouth. And so we were able to work with the Claremont Development, negotiate an agreement for them to build a booster station, their cost, no cost to our taxpayers. And then once that booster station's online, it'll remedy the firm capacity deficit. It's going to move water from one part of town to the West Plymouth area. So it's a short-term solution, but we know that if there was a problem in the future, we could put out a fire now in West Plymouth.
Takes care of that. And last but not least, strengthen the town's workforce, because let's face it, it's the people that work here that get all this done.
Yeah, no,
they really do, and people forget to to realize that.
And we wanted to have a special emphasis on our employees. So we've done a lot of work just around employee morale. If you came on board last year as a new employee, you would have seen a stack of papers that you had to fill out. Now it's all electronic. You fill your name in, you hit a button, and all 90 pages get populated. I mean, there's just a lot of little simple things to make it easier for our onboarding process, but make it for the back end, for the existing employees who have to process all this paperwork, just like simple things that the HR department was able to get done. But some big ones that came out of that this past year, we negotiated a new health insurance agreement with our unions.
Yep.
That's going to save over $3 million per year. So again, that's a win for the residents because it's saving taxpayer dollars, but it's also a win because our employees aren't giving up, actually they're gaining benefits by this agreement. So that was a win-win as well. So a lot of good things we did with the town's workforce. We did and even just trying to be more part of the community. Tree lighting festivals now on the front lawn. We had an open house during Halloween. We had over 200 kids came into town hall and we gave out candy. So we're just trying to make town hall a place where people want to come to work and enjoy working every day.
Yeah, and you want the efficiency of town hall to kind of reflect the efficiency of the town. There's so much going on in the town of Plymouth, and there's so many departments in the town hall, and it's a microcosm of what this town is. And the better it functions, the better the town functions.
Well, it's a really good point. You think about it. This is a $50 million town hall, and some of our processes are like in the 80s.
Yeah.
So now we're bringing our processes to meet the building,
Yep.
the building itself.
Exactly.
So, a 21st century building, we need to have 21st century processes.
That's right. Well, this has been a very abbreviated year in review, and like you said, both of these documents are available on the town's new, improved, beautiful website for anyone who wants to really dig down deep into this. And in the last 30 seconds, we have an election coming up on this Saturday.
That's right. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And early voting has been going on.
Yep. Early voting ends on today, this Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect.
And just last, if we have a second, we will have a meeting at Town Hall this coming Friday to talk about the construction project on Water Street at 9 a.m. in the Great Hall.
Okay, which is very, very important to a lot of people.
That's right.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has been great.
This was a good one.
As usual.
Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.